Welcome to the Killer Innovation Show, the longest continuously produced podcast in history. Each week, Phil McKinney brings you the insights and strategies to amplify your creativity and innovation skills. Here's your host, Phil McKinney.
Welcome to this week's show. Got a question for you. Have you sat back and thought about how you are creative, why you are creative, where do your ideas come from? What is that matter, the chemicals in your head, your brain matter? What is the right combination of that sparks that great idea that you're thinking about, that next startup that you're looking to start, that idea that you want to pitch to your boss? Where does creativity come from? So today we're going to talk about the science of creativity. Understanding the science of creativity can help all of us think about how do we become better at it? What are the things I should think about? What are the things and steps and processes and activities I can do to make myself even more creative? And what's the unknown? What is it we don't know about creativity? And where is that research going? Where is the research and the scientists working on understanding and unraveling the secret of creativity? What are they working on? What have they found out? And what path are they heading down? That is what we're going to cover in today's show. So, before we hop in, got that favor to ask: follow, like, and share. Follow us on social media. We are on all of the platforms. You can find me by just searching for Phil McKinney, no spaces, on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. We're everywhere. Even over on Pinterest, if you are big on Pinterest. You can find me everywhere. And that includes over on Substack. That also includes over on Medium, if you want to read the writings and my blog posts, etc. So follow us, like this show, give us a thumbs up, give us a rating, give us feedback, and then share. Share it with others. Let others know about the show. Help us to attract other people who could benefit from hearing about the work in the conversations and the topics we cover. I would greatly appreciate it. And with that, without any more further ado, let's hop in to this week's episode. Creativity is a complex and multifaceted phenomenon. Researchers and scientists have for years tried to understand and explain the science of creativity, but it remains somewhat of a mystery. However, there are certain theories and ideas that can help us better understand the science, the underlying way. How does the brain come up with ideas? What is the essence of human creativity? One theory suggests that creativity results from a combination of cognitive processes, including knowledge, skills, imagination, and even motivation. This means that people who are more knowledgeable and skilled in a particular domain are more than likely to be more creative in that domain. For example, a musician who is well versed in music theory is more likely to come up with new and original musical ideas than someone who has no background in music at all. However, it's also been proven that someone who is not an expert in an area and that comes in with fresh eyes can also be highly creative and can come up with ideas that those who are experts in the field would never think of. So both expertise and inexperience can be advantageous when it comes to creativity. Some scientists believe that creativity is the result of our brain making new connections between different concepts and different ideas. This theory is supported by the fact that people who are more creative have higher levels of activity in the parts of their brain responsible for making these connections. The result is that researchers have created a number of working models of creativity that are trying to explain its underlying mechanism. Some of these models focus on the cognitive processes, including creativity, while others focus on the roles of motivation, emotion, and even abilities. The two of these that are the most popular models are one, the four-phase model, which is composed of 4 stages or 4 phases: preparation, incubation, illumination, and verification. The second model is the creative abilities model. It outlines 5 different creative abilities: fluency, flexibility, originality, elaboration, and synthesis. Now, while these models of creativity provide some insight into the phenomenon, they are not exhaustive. The science of creativity is an ongoing field of research, with new theories and models being proposed all the time. But let's dive into these 2 models in more detail. The 4-phase model of creativity suggests that creativity involves 4 distinct stages or phases. First up, preparation. Preparation is when you gather information and resources that will be used in subsequent stages. During preparation, you may brainstorm ideas, gather inspiration from other sources, collect data, read articles, talk to people, develop a plan on how you're going to execute the idea. Preparation is also time to gather materials and tools that you will need in order to bring your idea to fruition. Inspiration can come from anywhere, so it's important to keep your mind open to new possibilities during this stage. Next up, incubation. Incubation is a time when an idea can gestate and grow. It's a time when you can let the idea kind of simmer and see if it develops into something. During incubation, you can also work on other ideas that might be related to the original one to see if they spark any new ideas. The key is to give yourself time to think about the idea and to see if it has any legs. If it does, then you can work on it in a more focused way. If not, then you can move on to other ideas. Either way, incubation can be a helpful part of the creative process. Next, illumination. Illumination is often seen as the moment of inspiration or realization when a creative idea comes to you. It can be a flash of insight or sudden realization of what needs to be done. It's the point at which you see the potential for something new and understand how to make it happen. For many people, illumination is the most exciting part of the creative process. It's the moment when everything comes together and you see the full potential of your idea. It can be a very exhilarating, very exciting experience. Next up is verification. When it comes to the creative process, verification is essential. This is where you take a step back, evaluate your idea, and make sure that it's something that you want to move forward with. It's important to be critical of your work during this stage, that you can make any necessary tweaks, changes, adjustments before moving on. This is the time to ask yourself if your idea is something that you are truly passionate about and if something that you think others will be interested in. Once you verify that your idea is worth pursuing, you can move on to that next stage of the creative process with confidence. The second model I want to talk about is the creative abilities model. This model is a framework that was developed to help explain what some scientists, what some researchers think of as the creative process. This model comprises of 5 elements, or abilities: fluency, flexibility, originality, elaboration, and synthesis. Each of these elements play a role in the creative process, and it's essential. So let's start off with fluency. In case of what I've talked about in the past, I typically use the word ideation. This is the ability to produce a lot of ideas in a short period of time. This can be both a good thing and it can be a bad thing, as it can lead to a lot of ideas that are not very good. But it also means that more ideas are being generated, which can lead to even better ideas. Fluency is important in the creative process because it allows for a lot of exploration and experimentation. It is also one of the easier abilities to measure, to know how good you are at it, as it simply requires counting the number of ideas that you can produce. Second up, flexibility. Flexibility allows people to adapt to new situations, changing environments. Being flexible means being open to new ideas and ways of doing things. This can be helpful in both your personal and your professional life. For example, if you're open to new ideas, you may be more likely to come up with creative solutions to a problem. And if you're flexible in your work, you might be able to adjust to changes in your industry or even in your workplace. While some people are naturally more flexible than others, anyone can learn to be more flexible. And here's a few tips that I'd like to discuss about how to be more flexible. When I run workshops, typically those people that are most resistant or feel like they can't contribute to the innovation activities within the organization are those that are a little bit stiff, more rigid, less flexible. So, how can you learn to be more flexible? Be open to new ideas. Don't dismiss them. Don't say, oh, we tried that before. Do not be an antibody. Do not become an innovation critic. Number 2 is try new things and don't be afraid to fail. I would encourage teams to go off and do team building exercises. Do crazy stuff. Karaoke. Whenever I go to Japan, companies that I meet with there always want to take me to do karaoke. Now, I am not a fan of karaoke at all, but it requires that I have to get out of my comfort zone. I do not have a singing voice at all, but getting up on stage and being uncomfortable and knowing that I'm going to fall flat on my face in front of a whole bar, restaurant, whatever that we're doing karaoke at is it reminds me to try and keep trying. Number 3 ways to become more flexible is be willing to change your plans if something isn't working out. Don't get locked in. Don't fall so in love with the idea that you're not willing to abandon it. You're not willing to kill it. Or you're not willing to pivot and change that idea depending on what it is and where you want to go. Number 4 is listen to others and consider their perspectives. Don't just rely on your thoughts or, wow, I think this is a really good idea. When I was CTO at HP, we were in a product review. This team presented this product idea to us. And when I pointed out that the product was far too complex, the answer that I got from that engineering team was, but we would use it. We like that idea. I reminded them that meant that they were designing a product that could only be used by the 47,000 engineers employed at that time at Hewlett Packard. That is not a product. So listen to others, consider their perspectives, and even search out and get perspectives from the non-experts. And last but not least, communicate openly. Be transparent on your idea and what you're working on, and be respectful of others. Be respectful. Don't look down on people if they're not an expert or they ask a question for you to explain, which would be, a pretty basic question if they had any knowledge in the space. So again, do that respectfully. And I just want to reinforce flexibility. It is the one constraint that I see consistently when I'm doing workshops and teaching is when people lack flexibility. They are so stiff, they are so rigid, they're so set in their ways. If there's one area of abilities that I would encourage everybody to work on, is flexibility. Next up, originality. We often think creativity as being equal to or synonymous with something original, being an original idea. However, that is not always the case. There are many instances of creative output, creative results that are not original, but are still considered creative. This is because creativity is not only about coming up with new ideas, but it's also about putting those ideas into action. It could be combining old items together to solve a problem in a unique and different way. It is this combination of originality and implementation that makes something creative. Now, there are several ways to measure originality. One common method is to look at the number of times an idea has been used before. Is this a similar idea that's been tried and maybe being used to solve a different problem? This can be done by looking at how many patents have been filed for a particular idea, or how many times a particular concept has been used in other works. Another way to measure originality is to look at the novelty of the idea. Now, this can be done by looking at how different an idea is from other ideas already exist. However, do not constrain creativity that something has to be new and novel, or it has to be something that is so disruptive. Creativity can be applied to a wide range of things, even existing things, even something as simple as an internal business process. So again, look at this approach of novelty or originality and be open to taking a look at creativity in a much broader definition. And again, when you think about it from your brain's perspective, we tend to self-filter. We tend to become so focused on what we think creativity is. Be open. Let your brain, let your creativity find it in some of the most unlikely places. Next up on the ability is elaboration. Now, elaboration is this ability to take that original idea and expand upon it, developing it into a more comprehensive, maybe more complex, or in some cases, a radically simplified idea or concept. This ability is essential for creativity as it allows ideas to be further refined and improved upon. Now, the example I give here is Walt Disney. Walt had this saying whenever the writers and developers of new animated films, or when Disneyland was being developed, writers and animators and Imagineers, the engineers that developed Disneyland, would come together and they would be pitching Walt an idea. Walt would look at it and his immediate reaction was, "Hey, great idea. Can you plus it? Can you plus it? Can you make it 2 times better, 5 times better, 10 times better? Let's think about how would we make this ride at Disneyland 5 times better? How would we make this animation 20 times better? Something that's never been done in a film before," right? This elaboration, this ability to build upon an idea and make it so much better is absolutely critical. Without this elaboration, ideas would remain fairly simplistic and undeveloped and really limiting the potential, because until we're pushed, we tend to stop moving forward with an idea once we verbalize it. When you get that pushback that says, "Great idea, but how do we plus it?" That is when the really great, the really big step up on that idea can come in play. In my experience, I see elaboration as the key difference between a good idea and a great idea. And by taking the time to expand upon that initial concept, going deeper, putting in more detail, it leads to a more well-rounded, more impactful final product. Therefore, many creative thinkers stress the importance of not rushing things like the brainstorming process, but taking the time to explore all of the possible avenues on an idea and how that would come out? Can you take two items in the brainstorm and mush them together and come up with an even better idea? Now, while some people may be naturally more inclined towards elaboration than others, it's a skill that can be developed. You can practice it, and you can be quite good at it. The last of the abilities is synthesis. Synthesis is the ability to take ideas and concepts from different sources and combine them into new creation. This can be done literally by combining different objects or ideas to create something new, and metaphorically by combining different concepts to create an entirely new idea. This mashup of activities, this ability to take two ideas, mush them together, and turn that into a product, a service, an experience, or a capability that is fundamentally new, that is fundamentally different. Now, again, these are just two models around the science of creativity. The researchers, the neuroscientists, the philosophers, everybody that's working in trying to understand really the underlying science of creativity are constantly coming up with new models. Literally, there are hundreds of them. I just picked two to cover in today's discussion. Now, why is there so much work going on in trying to understand what it is around creativity, this science of creativity? Well, one of the big drivers is artificial intelligence. There is a drive in a major way going on at universities and in government research centers and contractors and suppliers looking at, can AI become as creative as humans? Will AI step in and replace human creativity? Now, I've talked about this before, but I wanted to bring it back up again because it applies specifically to what is driving the research agenda in the research community and scientists today. Now, some people believe that artificial intelligence could eventually become, quote, creative, end quote. However, there's no consensus on what exactly creativity is. So it is difficult to say whether AI could ever truly be creative. There are several different theories of creativity, but one common element is this idea of novelty. To be creative, an idea or solution must differ from what has come before. Therefore, some people believe that AI, which can rapidly generate new ideas, could eventually become creative. However, on the flip side, some experts believe that creativity requires intuition to understand that human condition, something that AI is not capable of. For example, this idea of this intuition of understanding the human condition. If you're a native English speaker and you pick up an article to read, you quickly can validate that the sentences are structured correctly, even before you start comprehending the words that you're saying. But that the sentence itself is structured, the grammar is proper, etc. There have been some tests that have been done most recently with a lot of these AI tools that are doing as writing assistants. And if you ask those writing assistants to write long lengths of text, you can immediately, when you read it, know that it is not a human, that they're using some kind of an aid, and they've let that AI engine just write the whole article because it becomes quickly nonsensical. This intuition, this understanding of the human condition, understanding what is natural in the way we communicate, that is natural in the way words are put together. And that's just one example. So there are experts who believe that creativity requires this, that this is something that you can discern the subtleties of what it means to be human, what it means to be coming up with a novelty on an idea. It's not a big data problem where you just crank out 10,000 ideas. It's about that subtlety of understanding and that intuition. So while an AI may generate new ideas, it's unlikely to ever be truly creative. However, some experts believe that creativity requires more than just the ability to generate the ideas. They argue that creativity also involves to see how to make connections between disparate things, come up with solutions that are both original and practical. So, again, there are people who believe AI will be creative. There's the camp who believe that AI will never be creative. In reality, only time will tell if AI will ever be able to achieve what I would call true creativity. In the meantime, researchers are working on ways to make AI more creative, such as by developing algorithms that can better identify and combine novelty and usefulness. The new AI tools that are being applied to music, so it learns and understands all of the pacing and structure of what, in this case, Western lovers of music, what tends to get people excited, what makes songs popular. You start off with a beat, you feed it into the AI engine, and it creates the song. Now, what they have found in that case is those will actually work amazingly well. What they cannot do is they cannot lay lyrics down. They don't understand that element of, they can string a sentence together, but lyrics are different than just sentences, than just a string of words. And so, while these engines are actually becoming quite good, not there today, but stay tuned. It's a weak signal of what's coming, and this is how the science of creativity is being played out. Can you understand the science of creativity and translate that in to tools such as artificial intelligence? Now, talking about the science of creativity and how the brain works and how ideas come about, we have to talk about one important thing, and that is there's this kind of myth or belief or rule of thumb or whatever you want to call it about this relationship between creativity and mental illness. So while we're looking at how the brain works and how it enables our ability, we have to mention this. We need to talk about this. Now, there are several reasons why this myth persists. First, many creative people have spoken openly about their struggles with mental illness, which may give that impression that the two are somehow related. Second, some studies have found links between certain mental illnesses and increased levels of creativity. However, it's important to remember that correlation does not equal causation. Let me repeat that. Correlation does not equal causation. Just because two things are correlated does not mean that one causes the other. The myth that creativity and mental illness are linked is not supported by the currently available evidence. So, this is something that I just want to get on the table. It comes up, people ask about it, they ask for my thoughts about it. This relationship between creativity and mental illness, while there could be, in some cases, there's been some of these studies that have found the linkage between certain mental illnesses and increased creativity. There's the studies that have been done around causation that's not supported by the currently available evidence. And in some cases where there has been some early studies, they are counteracted by studies that say the exact opposite. So Let's leave it at the jury is still out. So the question that I have is what research should be done to better understand the science of creativity? There's a lot of research studies and a lot of programs at universities and corporations and companies like Amazon and Microsoft and Google, military is doing a bunch of research in this space. But what should be the research agenda? What research should be done to better understand the science of creativity? Now, a better understanding of this science can have an unfathomable impact on society, the economy, the way we live our lives. He who's the first to create the technologies, who truly understands creativity, who can train their labor force, and who can unleash human potential, and then ultimately by artificial means will have immense amount of power. And this impact, like I said, is unfathomable. It's something you can't even attach a figure to. As it stands, creativity is still largely a mystery. There is much we do not understand about how it works. And I've been in this space for 30 years. One area that warrants further exploration is the role of emotions in creativity. Emotions are known to affect cognitive processes, such as attention and memory, but their role in creativity is a little less clear. For example, it can help us identify and develop creative talent. It can also help us understand and treat mental illness. This issue of emotions is one that I picked up on when I do my one-on-one coaching with people, is using emotions or understanding the subtleties of the impact of emotions on creativity. Another area that could use more research is the neuroscience of creativity. Not just science of creativity, the neuroscience of creativity. We know that creativity involves the entire brain, but we do not yet understand how all the different regions of the brain work together to produce an idea, a creative idea, or how the subconscious attaches and links together and makes connections, these random things that all of a sudden pop into our head with the entire solution. And finally, another promising area of research is AI and creativity. Now, in this case, it is, can you test the models of creativity through AI to discern what works and what doesn't work? So it's almost thinking about using the brain of the AI engine or the neural network or big data machine learning and seeing if you can use that as almost a black box test to see, can you inject a process of creativity that AI platform can then use to spark. So I think that's an interesting opportunity. Think of it as the mental model of creativity as a digital twin of humans. Now, my belief is that as AI becomes more advanced, it is going to be increasingly capable of generating new ideas. But again, we just don't know how that's going to work and whether we truly are going to think it's creative. So, to sum up what we've talked about today, there is still much we do not understand about the science of creativity. However, continued research in this area could have a huge, profound impact on all of our lives. So, what did you learn from the discussion today? Well, when I think about the two models we discussed, the one that really stuck out for me was the creative abilities model. It's really looking at our natural abilities. You can argue whether it's nature or nurture. Does it come naturally because of your DNA, or is it nurture meaning you can learn it as a skill. I would argue everything we talked about is something that you can learn and become better at, but there are some things that you will be stronger at just out of the magic of being a human. The one area, and I emphasized it when we talked about it in the discussion today, but I want to emphasize it again, is flexibility. We tend to get stuck in our ways. We tend to get caught in a pattern. We tend to drive the same way to work every day. We tend to think about solving the problems the same way. We become stiff. We become rigid. We lack flexibility. And as I was working on today's show and writing the script and doing my research, this one really stuck out because when I think back to all of the workshops that I teach, all of the webinars that I do online, all of the coaching and mentoring that I do to teams and organizations around the world, the one, and I be quite honest, I never really put my finger on describing the issue until I did this research for today's show, and that is flexibility, or the lack thereof of flexibility. People being stiff, not being open to new and changing things, being flexible around ideas, not getting locked in, not falling in love with whatever the thing they're working on is. So, my encouragement is go back, listen, hop on over to killerinnovations.com to get the show notes for today's show. But remind yourself, maybe print this out, stick it next to your monitor, stick it on the wall of your cube. Remind yourself about all the things we talked about today, because all of these things can help you, one, understand and appreciate your own natural ability to be creative, but also help you practice and become more proficient and take what you have naturally and take it to the next level. So with that, we're going to wrap up today's show. I want to thank you for taking the time. Time is your most valuable asset. It is something that you cannot put on the shelf. You can't reclaim it. Once it's gone, it's gone. And you chose to spend this time with us and with me here on the show, and I greatly, greatly appreciate it. So thank you, and love to hear from you. Give us feedback. Give us ideas for topics. If you've got speakers who you think you would like to have on the show, let us know. We would love that. And we will be preparing next week's show soon. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back next week here at Killer Innovations.
Podcasting nonstop since 2005, this has been the Killer Innovations Show on the Innovators Network.